Welcome back to the Den. It's Porter here, and I'm excited to dive into some mock drafting in this episode. This will be our first mock draft of the off season. I will be working primarily in ESPN. This is actually my first time looking at the ESPN ADP. So, of course, this is a mock draft that is more for redraft purposes, but from the dynasty angle, what I really want to look at is who are the veteran values that we can identify. I think that's a really useful way to kind of hunt for some value is jumping in, seeing where some guys are going at redraft. Of course, if you're out on a player, don't overreact to this, but it is good to see where, who are some assets that maybe in a dynasty startup they're falling, but they're still they're going really early in a redraft format. That these are some veterans that have more value short term than long term, and you can add those to your roster to really help your roster compete. So we'll jump into this draft room, and as we wait to get started, I do want to just give a huge thank you for all the positive support so far with this channel. Whether you're watching this on YouTube in video format or you subscribe to this in podcast format on Apple or Spotify, I just really appreciate the positivity and encouragement that has come with starting this. And I'm really just excited for the community that we can build. I love the Dynasty community. There's so many smart players and guys who really just love ball. So happy to join that group, and just excited to engage with all of you as we develop this channel. Okay, so very curious here to see what happens to start off this draft. And what I'm noticing this year, like I'm already shocked that all these picks are, 30-second timers. So these mock drafts should kind of fly. I feel like in previous seasons, you're usually waiting a lot longer for folks to make their picks. All right, so Justin Jefferson was our 101 here, and Jamar Chase went at 102. I think this is PPR format, so can't criticize those picks at all to start this draft. And then Bijan Robinson is our third overall pick. So again, and then Gibbs. So we got the top two receivers and then top two running backs, pretty much both in redraft and dynasty off the board. And then I'm on the clock here at 5. And of course, Saquon is screaming here. I'm actually going to go a different direction. I'm going to go ahead and take CeeDee Lamb. I do have some concerns about Saquon, not to the point where I'm completely fading him. Just knowing that he had 400 touches last season. I mean, it's just really challenging for guys historically to equal that production or be better. And of course, Saquon was good enough where if you get 80% of him last year, he still is a high-end running back. But for me, I'm just going to take Lamb. Just a little bit of the safer option there. And I think adding Pickens to that offense helps Lamb. Just because their offense last year really was just throw Lamb the ball every play. They had no run game, no other options. So I think things can open up for CeeDee Lamb. So that's my pick there at 5. And then after my pick, so Saquon did go one pick after at the 106. And then we had Puka Nacua go at 107. And Ashton Janty, our first rookie off the board at 108. And obviously this early in drafts, these guys are, can't poke holes into any of these picks. These are all great players. And you see that value, why Ashton Janty is so valuable as the clear 101 this season. I mean, if he's going as a top 8 pick in redraft, he's expected to deliver pretty much immediately. And then after Janty, we have Amon-Ra go at 9 and Christian McCaffrey at 10 to end round 1. This is just a 10-team draft. So McCaffrey, to me, that he's kind of screaming value already right there. If you're doing like a sleeper mock draft for a dynasty startup, McCaffrey's going round 5, round 6, 28 years old. But if he is healthy, he is still that league winner. And his profile, if he can kind of show that he's overcome the Achilles stuff, which is incredibly concerning. I mean, he has the profile to still play into his 30s as like a limited pass catcher where he's still contributing heavily in PPR leagues. So McCaffrey ends at around 10. And then to start round 2, we have Malik Neighbors off the board, Devon Achane off the board, Josh Jacobs off the board, and Derrick Henry off the board. So we have a nice little run on running backs. And then Nico Collins off the board as well. And I am on the clock here. Jonathan Taylor, I could make that pick. I think Taylor is undervalued in a lot of ways, but just for the fun of this draft, I'm going to go tight end build here, and I'm going to take Brock Bowers. I think, if he is that true tight end 1 PPR, like that can break fantasy, getting him at the 206, I think is a pretty good value there, even in a 10-team league. I wonder if the market's just overcorrecting a bit to Laporta being disappointing, where, taking a young tight end early who's only done it once, maybe there's some more hesitation there. Not sure. But to me, Brock Bowers is like that classic. He's a receiver that you get to put in your tight end slot and just have that positional advantage. And I guess Trey McBride's in that conversation too. But after that, it's a little dicier. Okay, so our round 2 was Neighbors, Achane, Jacobs, Henry, Collins, Bowers, AJ Brown, T. Higgins, then Jonathan Taylor, and Tyreek Hill to end the round. And so far here to start round 3, we've got Devontae Adams, Kyron Williams, Trey McBride, and then Bucky Irving. And I am on the board. And I'm going to go ahead. So right now I'm debating between Brian Thomas. Why has he's fallen so much here. And I guess I'm going to let him continue to fall. I love BTJ, but I'm going to go ahead and take Drake London. I just have less question marks about London. Seeing, I think he was a top 6 wide receiver on the season. A lot of that was because I know he had an insane game, I think in like week 18, where it didn't really count. But really the split with Michael Penix, London was so good. So I'm really excited to see that connection continue this year. And I love Brian Thomas Jr. I think he's an absolute stud. And I don't want to put too many question marks with, what's happening with Travis Hunter, because the two of them can, of course, coexist. So I'll have to think that one through a little bit more, but just with the clock and the timer running down there, I'm just leaning London. I think I've just seen more of it, and I'm a little more confident that he can repeat what he did last season. And so after I took Drake London, we had Josh Allen off the board, then Brian Thomas, then Lamar, Chase Brown, and James Cook. And to end that round, I think Brown and Cook are both in their own right very good values at this point in Dynasty. For some reason, I think everyone assumes that both Brown and Cook are going to get replaced, and that just hasn't happened. We'll see what happens with Cook if he's holding out. Who knows what could happen there? But as things stand right now, they're both in really good situations on the Bengals offense and the Bills offense, and they're both they're going around 5 round 6 in Dynasty startup drafts. So I think both those guys are screaming values. And then so far here in round 4, Ladd McConkey, Terry McLaurin, Marvin Harrison off the board, Joe Mixon off the board, and then Rashee Rice off the board. And now it's time for my pick. And let's see. I'm going to take Breece Hall. He's someone who, I know I just talked about him in my values video. I think he is still a clear-cut RB1. He's a top 5 running back in Dynasty for me. And this offense the Jets offense is going to really change its identity this season back to being run first. And that does include Justin Fields. But historically, when we have mobile quarterbacks leading offenses, that actually just benefits the running backs, because they may have less volume, but they're going to go up in efficiency. And Breece Hall, he's 220 pounds, runs a 4.3, can do absolutely everything on the field. So for him to kind of fall here, in what's typically this like running back dead zone. I mean, I think Walker as well, who's on the board here, is still a really good value at this point. But to be able to get him here, I'm pretty happy with my build where I now have Lamb, London, and Bowers, and then Brees Hall as my RB1. So I'm comfortable with that. Okay, so our round 4 here is wrapped up. So we had Lad McConkey to start, then Terry McLaurin, then Marvin Harrison Jr., then we had Joe Mixon off the board, Rashee Rice off the board. I took Brees Hall, and then followed by that was Jalen Hurts, JSN, Joe Burrow, and Garrett Wilson. So still really, talented players at this point of the draft. I was hoping Daniels may have made it back to me, but he's off the board. So Kamara, Daniels, and Hampton went, which leaves me in this interesting tier here. I was debating between Walker and Hall. So I'm just going to go ahead and take Ken Walker. Another guy that I just think is incredibly undervalued. I'm not entirely sure why. I mean, even just pulling up his game log here, like he was still very good last year despite battling injuries. And we've just seen it now throughout his career. He's just been a guy who produces when he's on the field. So I'm not going to overthink that pick too much. And from the dynasty angle, he's still young. I know Brees Hall is entering a contract year. I think Walker may be as well. They were drafted in the same class. So yeah, these are both 2 contract year guys on teams where they should be good enough to have volume. And then James Conner, again, to me, is just a screaming dynasty value, and David Montgomery as well. Like these running backs who are over 26, I know Connor is much older, but I think they still go in round 5, and they're going to help you win your redraft leagues. And yet we just keep kind of throwing them to the side in dynasty. So I still love getting those guys where you get them in dynasty drafts as well. But to our final round 5, it went Kamara, Jaden Daniels, Amarian Hampton, George Kittle, Kenneth Walker, David Montgomery, James Conner, Zay Flowers, Mike Evans, Chuba Hubbard, Sam Laporta, Hawkinson. So we're kind of hitting that tight end run. And then Pickens, that's way too early for me, and DJ Moore. So both Pickens and Moore are players I'm not necessarily very high on. Just, I don't know. They're fine. I just think they have more name value than anything. And who just went off the clock? So Rome Odunze then also just went, who's lots of question marks. So here we go. So this is an interesting spot. So I had Xavier Worthy, RJ Harvey, DK, QJ, Judkins. I mean, not Quentin Johnston, Cortland Sutton. I'm going to take Harvey. So I'll do the rookie fever pick there and take RJ Harvey, the new running back for the Broncos. Just of the group that I was looking at on the board, I think from just the win now perspective, I just like his upside the most. He's in an offense where, he has potential to be an every down running back on a good offense, good offensive mind, and Sean Payton, great offensive line. So I'm not overthinking that one too much. And I think I could argue that he should be higher than some of the running backs that went before him. And then after Harvey, Xavier Worthy goes, and then Patrick Mahomes and Quinshad Judkins. And we have one more pick to finalize this round. So my team so far, I'm going this cursed lineup here of 3 running backs in PPR format, but I have Brees Hall, Kenneth Walker, and then Harvey's slotted in my flex right now. My 2 receivers are Lamb, London, and then I got Bowers and tight. Like I'm feeling pretty good about this starting lineup so far. I know that I should be going wide receiver heavier in this format. However, the board just hasn't really fallen that way, and that's just when you're picking, you want to take players you like, and you don't want to overthink your team need. Just like we talk about in Dynasty. You need to consider need a little bit more in redraft than Dynasty, because you of course have to fill a lineup and you can't like trade for picks or anything like that. All right, so we are on the clock here. I'll make my pick and then I'll break down what has happened. Okay. So I'll go ahead and take Devontae Smith. He's my wide receiver 3 on this team right now. He's just a guy that's consistent. I know he's not, I know he doesn't have like necessarily the huge wide receiver 1 upside. But at this point in the draft, when I'm looking at him and Jerry Jeudy and I don't know, like Jordan Addison, Matthew Golden, Chris Olave, these other guys on the board, I would want the consistency of Devontae Smith, where I just know that if I need to start him, if I need to flex him, I'm probably getting around like wide receiver 15 to 20 every week. Um, so I think that fits kind of what I need in this situation. And what's interesting about guys like Smith and Dynasty is like I don't know if there is much of a ceiling. I think we've kind of seen that he's going to be what he's going to be, and now he's 27. So he's someone that you can't probably get a ton for if you're trying to sell him, but that's a good guy to acquire on the cheaper end. I don't think you can get him for pennies, but now that he is over that age hump, I think you could very much make a case for him. So I'm gonna go ahead and take Trevion Henderson here. I'm just going all rookie running backs, I guess. I think they are going to exceed expectation of this class. I love his PPR upside. And again, I would consider Olave. I know Olave is an incredibly talented wide receiver. And even at this ADP, like the fact that he's 75th overall, it can make a huge case for him. There's a chance he makes it back to me, although we have a couple guys on auto draft. So maybe not, but I really just don't know what that situation is going to be like at all. If Tyler Shough is just decent, Olave should be fine. But if he's bad, the downside is bad. And, I don't like holding people's pasts against them, but I took Olave last year in one of my higher stakes leagues, pretty much at the end of the first round. I think I took him 12th or 13th overall. And I just got a little bit burnt. So I'm kind of just out there. And it looks like we're entering this territory here where we've got a lot of older wide receivers. Not sold. I don't need running back now, which is good because then I don't have to take Javonte Williams, Khalil Shakir. I got Juwan Jennings and Chris Godwin, who are both in my video about good buys. I'm going to go Godwin. I just think his upside is higher. And since he's my wide receiver 4 on this team, I know that if he misses some time or takes a while to get back to the Chris Godwin that we know and love, that's fine. And my team can afford that. Maybe if I was in a 3 receiver league, I'd consider going Jennings where I'm getting more immediate production. But I just think the upside is so much higher there with Godwin. And I don't need him to start right away. Okay, we got a lot of recapping to do here. And we have so many teams on auto draft, so this draft is just flying. Nearing, okay. All right, back on the clock here. I could just be rookie running back guy here and take Cam Skattebo. So on the board, I'm looking at Jalen Warren, Cam Skattebo, Stephon Diggs, Debo, Eckler. Yeah, I'm gonna do the upside shot, and I'm gonna take Cam Skattebo, who could be an every down running back for the New York Giants. And there are some situations where maybe the Giants will be better than we expect. Okay. So I think my last update was the end of round 6 with Pacheco. So round 7, it went Travis Kelce, DK Metcalf, Travis Hunter, DeAndre Swift. My pick was Devontae Smith. Then Jamison Williams went, Cortland Sutton went, good value there. I think from a dynasty standpoint, he's still putting up points. Aaron Jones, another guy who's going way earlier in redraft than in dynasty. Calvin Ridley, same scenario. And then Jalen Waddle, who's I think really falling from the graces of the public in all formats. Round 8 was Pollard, Judy, Loveland, Caleb Johnson, David Njoku. I took Trevion Henderson, then Tet McMillan, Ramondre Stevenson, Mark Andrews, good value, Cooper Kupp. Round 9 was Tyrone Tracy, Chris Olave, Matthew Golden, Jordan Addison. I took Chris Godwin. Then Juwan Jennings went right after, then Jacoby Myers, then ETN, Bo Nix, and Baker. And before we get to round 10, I will make my pick here. So we got Keon Coleman, Evan Ingram, Michael Pittman, Zach Charbonnet, which I might consider taking just based on the fact that I do have Ken Walker. But we're going to actually just go quarter. I'm going to take Brock Purdy. So underrated in fantasy. I think in his career starts, I would have to fact check this, but I remember seeing a stat that he is basically QB6, and the only 5 guys who have scored more points than him total in his career are, the usual suspects. It's Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. I think there's just like a couple of other guys in there, but he is to me like a QB1 solidly. And I'll probably pair him up with someone else with maybe a little bit more upside. But just taking a swing at quarterback this late, like I don't believe in a lot of the players who are on the board here. So I'm fine taking Purdy and getting a consistent starter at my quarterback position, and I can take a swing later on a higher upside QB, potentially. All right, and speaking of upside, I'm going to be the rookie running back guy again. I don't know why. I always notice when I don't draft running backs in ESPN leagues or any of my home leagues, those are when I hate my teams the most. So I always try to stay disciplined and say just like take running backs when you like them on the board because you can always find receiver value. So I'm going to take Bashal Tutin. Just of the guys on this board. So right now I see Tank Bigsby, Mooney, Caleb Williams, Jaden Higgins, Rashid Shaheed. Of that kind of grouping, I would say Tutin is like the league winner of that group, right? Like if he hits and he becomes the RB1 in Jacksonville in this Liam Cohen offense, you're going to be so happy that you got him at this value. Of course, he could just, fumble his way off the field and be completely irrelevant, but I'm fine taking that swing. Okay, so I wrapped up round 9. Round 10 here, we had Javonte Williams and Ricky Pearsall, Dalton Kincaid, Kyler Murray, Khalil Shakir. Then that's where I took Scatabo. And then after him went Stephon Diggs, Jonnu Smith, Brian Robinson, and Dak Prescott. And then round 11 went Debo, Jalen Warren, Emeka Egbuka, Austin Eckler. Now I took Brock Purdy. After Purdy went Ingram, White, Burden, Keon Coleman, Michael Pittman Jr. And then round 12 was Reed, Jaden Reed, Zach Charbonnet, Quentin Johnston. Just might as well throw your pick in the trash. Najee Harris, Tajay Spears, and I took Bashal Tutin. After him went Jaden Higgins. Then the Broncos DST, Darnell Mooney, and the Ravens DST. So we're kind of hitting this range where people are probably checking out of the draft. And then round 13 so far went Kareem Hunt, Tank Bigsby, Jordan Mason, Texans D, and I'm on the clock. And that my target there was 100%. Oh my gosh, why did I just lose his name? Oh, Jordan Mason. I think a great pick there. I'm going to take Justin Fields. I said I was going to take an upside quarterback after taking Purdy. And Fields, I think, is someone that's just underrated in all formats. I know that like what he's shown us on the NFL field is that he may just not be a very good quarterback, or most likely he's not a very good quarterback. But what gets lost in that is that he is a very good fantasy quarterback. So if he is on the field, he is putting up points. He's a QB1 when he's on the field with insane rushing upside. And if I'm a win now team in Dynasty, like I think you can get him cheap. Like in one of my leagues, I know he was offered for a deal that was like very clearly like you should trade for Fields, but the owner didn't want it because Fields isn't good. So that's like the mainstream narrative there. And I do need some more upside here with my wide receiver room. It's a little thin. So I'm gonna go ahead and take Brandon Ayuk. I think that's a pretty good injury discount to get him here in round 14. Just like with Godwin. So I guess I might be risking a little bit having Ayuk and Godwin on this same team, but they're two guys that if they're healthy, they're top 15, top 20 guys. So to feel like, my worst receiver is Brandon Ayuk, I'm fine with that. And his injury, I really hope he recovers. I've said this before. I'm a huge fan of Brandon Ayuk. I think he's a true, complete wide receiver. He blocks. He runs great routes. And I would just love to see him back on the field. And I think when he is back on the field, there will be plenty of competition there for targets. But he is more of an alpha than he gets credit for. Like, I think he will out target Ricky Pearsall. As much as I like Juwan Jennings, I think if Ayuk's full strength, he will out target Juwan Jennings. And I think I love Kittle, so I was hoping to talk about him a little bit in this video because he's another guy that if I'm doing a dynasty startup, I'm targeting him everywhere. He's going way too late. But I actually think he might take a really big hit this year, not just from the other receivers, but really more so from Christian McCaffrey. I think Christian McCaffrey going down last year benefited George Kittle pretty much more than anyone else. And, I'm not kicker defense. I don't have any strong thoughts here. I like the Seahawks defense. I think they play the Niners week 1, so probably not like a great pick there. But you want to be streaming defense anyway. But I know they have a good week 2, week 3, week 4 schedule as well. And then we'll just take whatever kickers on the board for us to wrap up this draft. See who we get. I want Fairbairn, dude. He's good. This dude's a stud, man. So disrespectful that he is going this late after like pretty much 2 seasons in a row is like is like a top 3 fantasy kicker. All right, so this draft is over. So after I took Ayuk, Adam Thielen went, Justin Herbert went. This shows there's insane quarterback value every year. Like you never need to overreact and take a quarterback early. And I, didn't take my own advice and took 2, but I'm happy with the outcome. But like the fact that you can get Herbert late or, Caleb Williams is another great upside throw. Same with Drake May, guys that we love in Dynasty that we're hoping can produce more this year. So there's a lot of really good quarterback value across the board. And then, of course, around 15, round 16 is not really worth going through too much just because they're mostly kickers and defense. So I just want to eye this a little bit. I tried to point them out as they came in, but there were plenty of like veteran values that are going much earlier in redraft than where you would need to spend on them in Dynasty. So I think Higgins, actually, T. Higgins, AJ Brown, like those are good examples. I think because they're over the like age 26 threshold of where, dynasty managers can tend to overreact. Both those guys, like the fact that they're top 20 redraft picks shows you that they're putting up points now. So those are 2 guys I do like to, I would love to target in dynasty leagues. I think they're viewed as low end wide receiver ones when they still both could very easily be high end wide receiver ones. So they went at 17 and 18 respectively. Davante Adams is interesting to me because he is 31 years old. He's pick number 21 in this draft. He went ahead of guys like Drake London, Brian Thomas, which of course would not happen in Dynasty. I don't think it's justified in redraft either. At this ADP, he's probably someone I'm completely fading. I think that offense is going to run through Puka. Adams is obviously very good and he's going to get his respect in this offense. However, I still think Puka is going to alpha him. I really do. And if you're expecting, I don't know, because like Drake London to me and Brian Thomas both should be top 12 wide receivers. And I just think the case for Davante is there's so much more downside. And when you are drafting in fantasy, I am an advocate for you should draft the upside. You don't want to just be looking at the worst case scenario for everyone. So I'm not trying to say, and I love saying like we don't, in the fantasy community, we don't dislike players. We dislike ADPs. So this isn't a knock on Davante Adams. Obviously he deserves his flowers for what he's done in his career. But if he is staying at pick 21 in redraft, I just know I will have 0% of him. And he'll probably have spike week. So he will I know he'll have those big week winning weeks potentially. But yeah, that's just way too rich for my blood. But on the flip side of that, I like him in Dynasty because I know if he's going way later in sleepers, I think you can probably get him like round maybe I wish I had the ADP in front of me, but I think he's going to like round 7, round 8. So the fact that he's viewed as an early third in redraft says a lot about what he's expected to do this season. Tyreek Hill's another guy that's falling probably too much. He went here at pick 20, and there's just so much off the field concern, plus the injury. Like they're saying his wrist might not ever be the same. And just what we saw in the field last year was not exciting. And I think from an age standpoint, as wide receivers get older, the first thing they're going to lose is that speed. So Tyreek Hill, that's how he wins. He's not going to win in the physical way like a Mike Evans. I think we'll just see that fall off way sooner. So I am concerned by what we saw last year. But again, I think he was just a year ago a top 6 pick in redraft. So for him to really fall to 20, you could be getting some value there if you believe both him and Adams. I probably am out on, though, at those respective ADPs of 20 and 21. And I love this early round 4. This actually round 4, looking at this might be my favorite round. Just I feel like everyone here is a good value. Like Ladd McConkey, I don't think is getting the respect that he deserves. I don't think he's this fun, exciting white slot receiver. I think he is absolutely an alpha wide receiver 1. And I think if you look at what he did last season, I don't know why there's a big gap between him and some of those other promising rookies. Although maybe I'm making that up because he was the next receiver off the board after Brian Thomas. So it's good that he's being respected where he is. But for him to be in the 30s, like, I'm expecting a big year 2 from Ladd. They didn't add much. I like Trey Harris, but I think Trey Harris is a plus version of what they wanted Quentin Johnston to do. So I think Trey Harris is obviously a much better player than QJ and should earn more targets. But I think that also might help Ladd to have someone else on this team that can catch the football. So Ladd can be used more in space. Terry McLaurin, I might be lower on. I think like he's obviously a great receiver, but last year was really the only year of his career where he's had that wide receiver 1 season. So I could see the safety net though, like looking at him versus Marv, who is the next pick. If you're out on Marv, of course you're going to want the safety of Terry McLaurin. So I can't fault that logic too much, but I am expecting a dip from Terry McLaurin. They add Debo, who knows what the Commanders are going to get out of Debo this season, but he will, if anything, take targets. Whenever a rookie quarterback has such a strong season, not always, but just more anecdotally, I remember, like, look at CJ Stroud, who was just viewed as the next big thing and then has a huge sophomore slump. I don't think you're going to get a sophomore slump out of Jaden Daniels in fantasy because of the rushing upside, but I could see that passing game taking a step back as people, get more tape and eyes on what Daniels accomplished in that rookie season. Joe Mixon here, fairly good value. Again, this is a kind of perfect target in Dynasty too. This is a backfield that they only added Woody Marks, and here you're getting Joe Mixon at round 4, so he's viewed as kind of this RB2 starter, and yet in Dynasty you can probably get him for much less than that. And then Rashee Rice, he's someone I wanted to put in my video about values just because I think he's going lower than expected, but I'm actually surprised that he went here at pick 35. I guess this is probably about where I would take him. So, but still just a good pick. I think let's look at his points per game from last season. His first 3 games before the injury were incredible. Like he was a top 3 fantasy wide receiver. Not sure why this won't load, but yeah, he had, I know it was like, I think 17, 18, and like 20 points in his first 3 games before the injury. So I think Rashee Rice is a great value. He's just going to take up more of the middle of the field there as Travis Kelce kind of continues to decline. But yeah, I really like everyone in this range. Like getting Jalen Hurts, late round 4, and JSN, I think are all very good picks at this stage. George Kittle, there he is, and was just mentioning him. He went here at pick 44 in this mock, and he's just someone that the disrespect is way too much in Dynasty. I'd easily pay like a a mid to late first for Kittle if I'm a contender and I do not have a tight end. Like to me, he is the clear tight end 3. It's Bowers, it's it's Bowers and McBride, and then to me, Kittle, I'd rather have him in like win now mode, even than like a Laporta, and definitely ahead of the rookies like Warren and Loveland, who obviously, depending on your dynasty situation, if you're in a rebuild, you're going to lean those younger guys. But if I'm win now, like George Kittle is still tight end 3 to me. I think he has at least 2 seasons left of high production, um, probably 3. So I don't know. And he's not like Kelsey where he's entirely dependent on like the volume. Like George Kittle's always been more of a efficient fantasy player. Like he's never had the target share that those top end guys have always had. So you have always been leaning on touchdowns and yards after the catch and the big play explosiveness from Kittle. So I don't know. So with these other guys coming back, particularly CMC, I do think that hurts some of the targets for Kittle, but he's still just good enough where he's going to be efficient. And that's kind of always what he's been in fantasy. So I think last year was actually I don't think he'll replicate what he did last year because last year there were so many targets available. But if he can just go back to what he's been his entire fantasy career, he's still such a good value. And then a lot of these guys, I know I talked about them when they first popped up, but yeah, I think Walker, Montgomery, and Connor are all values, here being top 50 picks, yet they're guys you can get kind of outside that in Dynasty. Mike Evans as well. And round 6 looks pretty straightforward. I might just be crazy. I'm not as sold on Xavier Worthy as I think I should be. I need to go back and watch more of his tape from last year. Because he always felt like more of the big play threat as opposed to someone I'm feeling good starting every week in fantasy. And he's still kind of being looped in. And this is like a very shaky tier where he is because before him it was Pickens, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, and then Xavier Worthy. So I think he belongs in this conversation for sure. But I don't know. I think with Rashee Rice coming back, he's just going to take up more of those targets. So I think we're getting a little too excited about Worthy. I'm just holding my expectations a little bit. Again, never dislike players, just their ADPs. And yeah, round 7, Travis Hunter is gonna be so fun. I can't wait to watch him in the NFL. And there's great upside there. I mean, yeah, I think at this point everyone's sort of fairly where they should be. It's interesting to see Caleb Johnson go ahead of Trevion Henderson because I don't think we would see that happen in Dynasty. And interesting, like Caleb Johnson's also in a split backfield. Like I think they're going to want to use Jalen Warren enough, just like the Patriots are going to use Ramondre. But this is almost like the opposite situation where Jalen Warren for the Steelers, he's the pass catching back, where Caleb's expected to be this bruiser red zone guy. And then for Trevion Henderson, it's the flip side where he's going to be the passing down guy early. And then maybe Ramondre is expected to be more of a goal line guy. I actually don't see that happening just because of the fumbling issues with Ramondre. I just don't think Vrabel's going to want that. So, I mean, both of these guys, though, I think will become 3 down backs sooner rather than later. But it's interesting to see them flip ADP here in this format. Same with, I know I took Scatabo in round 10. Tyrone Tracy went ahead of him. Tyrone Tracy was pick 81, and Scatabo went here at 96. That's pretty surprising to me. I don't, if Tyrone Tracy does come out of the gates as the starter, I don't expect that to last very long. His strength is his pass catching. He's not good in short yardage. He wasn't good on the goal line last season. He has fumbling issues. So I just don't think the Giants are going to have a really long leash on him. And even though he's a day 3 back and Cam Scatabo is also a day 3 running back in terms of draft capital, they invested much more in Cam than they did Tracy. So if anything, I think Tracy could go back to like a 3rd down role, but we know that Cam is also electric with the ball in his hands. So I don't know what kind of role Tracy has on that offense. In hindsight, Chris Olave probably is the steal of the draft here at pick 82. He's someone that we've seen be a wide receiver 1 in fantasy, and you're getting him at the top around 9. And obviously Tyler Shuck isn't exciting, but neither is any of the Saints wide receivers. So he should still just dominate targets. And again, just the quarterback value is just insane. Bo Nix and Baker, there's so many good fantasy quarterbacks that you really just don't need to reach at all. Interesting to see Burden go as early as he did. I don't know what his actual ADP is. Oh, okay. His ADP was 140, so he was taken much earlier by this team. And I can't blame them. I mean, his upside is very exciting. I mean, if next on the board were like Keon Coleman, Michael Pittman, I don't blame anyone for wanting to take an upside play in Luther Burden, especially when DJ Moore and Romo Dunze both went round 6. So both those Bear guys, who I think we don't really know what that room's going to look like. Getting Burden, who I think you could argue has just as much of a case as those other guys. So you get him 5 rounds later. That's pretty good value. Yeah, and then I mean by round 13, I'm going to say it again. Jordan Mason, I'm targeting him in every draft, every format. I think he's useful this season. I think he'll be useful in the future as well. Tucker Kraft, another good steal. I feel like I'm just doubling down on my take lock for my buy lows, but there are some guys that are some really good value that you can get here in these drafts. I was surprised that Brandon Ayuk went as late as he did. I know that he has injury concerns, but I think he's another guy who's just kind of been somewhat disrespected. Like he's pretty consistently a top 15 wide receiver. So yeah, I know the injury's bad. I don't know. I trust receivers to bounce back more than I would other positions. And then we're kind of entering our gross tier of kickers and running backs. So it's fun to jump in, at least for the first time here, and really look at these ADPs. So I definitely want to revisit this, and I'll have to break down, look at the picks again and kind of see where did I go wrong. But for the way my team turned out for that first mock, I'm happy with the results. I'll take it. And this is always an ongoing process. So that's the thing to keep in mind when you're drafting. You should be mock drafting. Just to get used to the tools and the draft room and what buttons you need to click. And even if you're very familiar with ESPN, it looks like some things have changed this year with their format. But wherever your league is hosted, it's good to jump in there, do a mock draft, and just see what ADPs you like. Start having a gauge and figure out what value works for you, who are players you like, and where can you get them. And then that can also really identify, you'll start to notice like that you like picking from certain slots more than others when guys at your ADP start to fall to you. So if you're in one of those leagues where like maybe instead of a randomized draft order, you're getting to choose which slot you pick from. So like instead of having the number 1 pick, maybe if you're picked number 1, you get to choose like 1 to 12 which slot you are. It's good to just have a gauge for that, so you're not going in completely cold. That was a fun draft. I definitely want to do more of these. We're gonna make this a tradition. We'll do our mock draft Mondays and kind of track ADPs throughout the offseason to see where we end up. But again, I think my takeaways are rookie running backs to the moon. Take them in your redraft leagues. This class is legit, and I think they're going to overperform ADP in a lot of those instances. So absolutely, I did feel like the rookie running back guy in that draft, but based on where I was taking them, if that ADP holds, I'm definitely gonna be that same guy in my leagues once we start drafting. And then additionally, to stick with the running backs, buy low in Dynasty on these vets. Like we're seeing Connor, Pollard, Mixon, all those older guys going much earlier in redraft format than you'll see them go in Dynasty. So I like those. If you're a win now team, you're going to have to target those types of guys. Even a guy like DeAndre Swift, who probably after this season he'll definitely drop off in value if they just add anybody to the Bears backfield. But he's someone where, he's helping you potentially win now by having a workload. So I think that's my big takeaway from that first draft. Rookie running backs to the moon and buy low on the veteran running backs because they're helping you more than the Dynasty ADP would show. So appreciate you joining me for this episode. If you like what you saw or listened to, definitely subscribe, and we'll be posting more content for you. Looking forward to growing, having some great conversations. about Dynasty Fantasy Football. I'll see you next time.